Awesome. Thanks for joining us again this morning or afternoon, whenever you're listening to us on Influencing the Shift 3.0. It's morning for us, so I'll say morning. Today, we're having a great conversation around adapted equipment in sport. And I have my co-host here, Scott Preston, helping me out. Scott, do you want to start us off?
For sure. Thanks, Cassie. So Pauline, thank you so much for joining us today to have a conversation related to funding to provide inclusion in sport. So let's start off. You can introduce yourself and a bit about your experience in relation to sport and inclusion of persons with disabilities.
Well, thank you for giving me the time. I'll try not to talk too much because I get rather enthusiastic about this. It's about a passion for just helping other people. Not everybody is as fortunate as we are. So I'm Pauline Halstead. As you hear from my accent, I did not grow up in Canada. My father did, though, in Quebec. So I am Canadian. I've been here over 40 years. And when I was a child, I always wanted a kayak. I have a picture of myself, one of my big brothers in a rowboat. There was a kayak there and I never got to use it because I had two big brothers, right? When I came to Canada, one of the first things I did was to buy an old kayak. No idea what I was doing, but I remember when I first got in that boat, it was, wow. Sometimes there's no explanations. So I decided to kayak, but I didn't do anything until about 20 odd years ago when I formally took lessons. And then it was a big oh wow. Sometimes we do these things and we don't actually know why we do them. For me, it started as a child. I used to play in a park and there was a Cheshire Home in there. So I had a little fair in my garden. I must have been about 9 years old, raised the money and took it to the home. And I think the reaction of the person who received the money, which was very little, but to me it was huge, right? 9 years old. It was her reaction. There was no patronizing, no nothing like, oh, what a good little girl. It was, you know what, we could really use this. Thank you. And it was that authenticity that it just made it for me. We used to have a little club, helping elderly people, such as myself. I'd love that right now to come and do my dishes with, the broken wrist. But I think if people were to just give on their own little corner, it would make a big difference. It is a me society, and that is a little sad. Because when you share yourself, your skills, it makes a huge difference to others. That was about it, really. It just, the idea came to me. The how, well, if you wait until you know how to do something, then you're not learning. So I did it. Was it difficult? Well, challenges are okay. Sometimes they get the better of you. I did become a kayaking instructor because my biggest obstacle was insurance. When I became the instructor, I could use the ORCA, Ontario Recreational Canoe Association insurance. Great group of people. And I used to keep filling in the names and then saying, sorry, they didn't pass because, well, they couldn't do this or they couldn't do that. And eventually ORCA created a coaching session. So I didn't have to keep filling up these certification forms. They were fantastic. But at the same time, I did Paddle Canada and I did BCU, British Canoe Union. Cut long story short, I moved and I fell to Paddle Canada. So now I'm a level 1 instructor and I'm actually heading up a committee to make a training for adaptive kayaking for, right now it's instructor trainers.
Wow.
So I would say 2009, 2001 or 2, I was kind of muddling around on my own for years. I was a Montessori teacher most of the year, and that's important because that's very hands-on. It's intuitive. It is not following one way, it's following the way of the person that you're working with. And I'm not going to say teaching, because I think teaching is not, what you do is you open up someone's door to learning. You don't shove it into their brains. You show them how to assimilate, be curious. And I think that's important. 2009, I incorporated Abilities in Motion. Before that, it was Paddles and Boots, which I thought was kind of cute. But I went to Abilities in Motion. And in 2019, it became a charity. Also, though, about that time, I did get ill, plus I moved to Nova Scotia. So I have resigned from the charity, but I'm still working with them. And of course, the next step is I'm just incorporating a new one in Nova Scotia. So some people never stop.
That's
I'm
amazing.
putting together a really cool group of people I'm looking for specific skills to be in this group, and I need 5 people. So that's it.
So Pauline, just to jump back, this is great, and we don't want anyone to stop because the momentum for this is just fantastic. I have a question just going back to the instructor trainers concept, and just for the listeners to understand, was that your idea to do that? And I think the understanding is building capacity. I'm just wondering if you can speak on why it's important to have instructor training programs to have a successful launch of this.
Instructor trainer is just the top. It's just the cream on the top. This is really important. Many people may want to do it, but they don't know how. I learned the hard way by just doing it with bits and pieces lying around, but we'll talk about that in a minute. It's really to give them the tools in order to do this activity safely. And I think safety is the number one issue. But also to help to take away some of their fear and attitude. Many people they don't see what the possibilities are. They only see what people can't do and not what they can do. And that goes for themselves as well. So somehow, and my table here is piled up with books, to write a program where you're not just shoving information at them, but you're creating that empathy, that fun, that I can do this. And that's the challenge. The challenges don't stop coming.
No, that's amazing. I'm really excited to dive into this even more so. Just like
Uh-oh.
hearing you speak, it seems like you have.
I'm getting inspired. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're inspiring me, because it's a bit of a lonesome life when you have these ideas, and most people say, "Are you crazy? Huh? They can't do that. They can't do that."
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like, why not?
I think that's why there's more people like you in the world, or we need more people like you in the world that are the why nots, right? And I think that's kind of why we have these conversations and why this kind of speaker series came to be, was because we want to just influencing that shift of mind for the listening audience around, like, why not try things. So it's through these experiences that you've had, Pauline, that we're hoping others will grasp onto tidbits of information and hopefully try it themselves in their own capacity. So.
And there is a huge change of attitude. I mean, 20 years ago, it was unheard of. I would say 50 years ago, you didn't even see a person who was different. They were put into institutions. And I actually worked in one when I was 21. I gave up a good career, possibility of in the science field. And I went to work at this place. I lasted 1.5 years. It was demoralizing, sad. They would just put in 1,500 people put into this village, they called it. So many changes since then.
Yeah.
I mean, even one person, I worked in occupational therapy, and one person only had a cleft palate. Wow. They look different, shove them in the home. It was terribly sad. Yeah. So we dealt with
a long way.
We've come a huge way. Go back further than that, it was the poorhouse.
Right.
We're still not fully integrated. I don't really like the word inclusion because it's a label. And as soon as you label it, you're building up barriers.
We're definitely diving into some big phenomenon conversations. So I want to stay somewhat on track because I definitely agree with you, Pauline. The word inclusion itself can have its own kind of connotations to it, I feel like. So I like the word integration, and you're right, we're not necessarily there yet. But I do want to go back to just, we need to have multiple conversations with you, clearly. But in terms of just adaptive equipment, going to keep that as our grounding kind of piece. I'm curious as to your experiences. It sounds like you've had to, like you said, do some of like these learnings on your own. What's your experience? Like, what adapted equipment pieces have you utilized in water sport thus
There wasn't
far?
anything
Oh,
20
really?
years ago. And I would say my biggest adaptive equipment were my paddlers.
Oh,
My very first one, I was helping out at an adventure show for a hiking company. This lady came along and using a wheelchair, and she said, "Oh, that looks really good." I said, "Well, you know what? Have you thought of kayaking? It might be just a little less challenging for you." Because she couldn't walk. She was my first paddler.
Wow.
So we met somewhere in Ontario, Orangeville, and she got in a wheelchair and I got my stuff out and then looked and went, "Oh, there's a beach we have to cross." It was, there's the barrier, there's a beach. I somehow got her across, but after that, someone I knew took down an old shed, and I think I created the first Moby mat because I took all these pieces of wood and I take it from the back to the front, the back to the front, the back to the front, and we got to the beach.
wow.
So, when you talk about equipment, you be resourceful. That was safe. I had them all neatly cut the same sizes. All I had to do was lay them out, and I didn't have to roll it up. And it went
Wow.
back with me, back to front, all the way back to the trailer again. Her balance was good. I think after that was her cousin who has autism. He's paddled with me since about 2001. And that was a different ball game altogether. I did not need any equipment except for resourcefulness. So if you want to focus on equipment, I remember working for a hospital, and this guy said, I want to go paddling. Okay. I said, but I've got a feeling that you are going to fall out of the boat. I want to go. I have nothing to balance your boat in the water. Doesn't matter. I want to go. Are you okay to get wet? Sure. He gets in the boat, he falls out. He said, that was fun. So it's not so much the equipment, it's the paddlers. You see how it evolves? I'm not handing it to them. They're making me create it. They're challenging me to solve the challenge.
Yeah, the barrier, trying to overcome it. And it's interesting to me that you kind of, I think it's an important piece to highlight because sometimes, and I'm kind of glad you brought it up actually, like I think we get so stuck on adapted equipment pieces, like what equipment piece do I need for them to be successful? And sometimes we, as you may know, like some adapted equipment pieces are quite expensive. And so, to kind of remind people, before going straight to what are the adapted equipment pieces I can purchase, but like what are the resources I currently have that could potentially solve the barrier or mitigate the barrier is what I say. I think that's a good reminder because I concur that like in my experience programming, most of my successes have actually come from dollar store equipment. Like
Lorna, Home Depot. I'll tell you about that in a minute because the number one challenge is money. But when you think about it, we're all people. And I don't like the attitude of, me and them, that I'm going to serve them. I'm going to make it better for them. It's not the way it works. They're a person. how do you see this working for you? What do you need? What you teach me. And the people you're working with will teach you. Well, I'm having trouble with my balance. Okay, so are you okay with falling out the boat? Oh yeah, great fun. Or the water's too dirty, and that happens a lot, right? We do not want to get them wet. So what do we need? Well, in the very beginning, I had a set of sponsons, which was a very old way of self-rescue in a kayak. Right now, these days you have a paddle float. You put it on, blow up and climb back in. The sponsons, you could put them on to prevent you tipping over, but they were very complicated. You had to get them underneath the boat, blow them up. And basically it was a long balloon either side of the cockpit. And that was it. And your boat won't tip over. Well, that was convoluted. So I was paddling on a river one day and there was a lot of boat traffic and I found a boat fender. So, okay, I'll pick that up because it's free. Stuff it in the boat. I found another boat fender. Okay, so what do boat fenders do? Well, they prevent this, but everything has more than one use. So I put them, I actually had to go and buy one. I couldn't find the fourth one. And I tied them on the bow and stern. And they roped through so they wouldn't come off and they wouldn't move. So, I had lengthened the strings. That boat, that was fantastic. That was my outriggers. I had to buy one though, $20. So, be resourceful. Whatever you need, go to the dollar store. The kneeling pads, never used to have those. It used to be the swim floats. I still got pictures of my swim float stuffed down the back of a seat. Old PFDs, ask around. Everybody's got old PFDs around, cut them up. Wow. Towels, noodles, didn't have noodles then, but whatever there is lying around. As long as you don't prevent the egress from the boat. Because nothing is 100% untippable.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, Pauline, and this is just amazing examples of thinking outside the box and being resourceful. And would I be wrong to say that this really starts with going back to what inclusion means and listening to the people that have that need and actually say, okay, what can I be doing to meet this need by listening? Like, I think that first thing starts with listening, because I think a lot of people in the recreation world, we're so consumer focused. We're looking for a product that already exists out there. We say, well, it doesn't exist, so I can't help you. It's kind of something we hear. So do you think that starts just with the conversation? Listening?
Oh, wow. I have too many things going through my head. I would say, no, this is wonderful. Absolutely. I'm really enjoying this because it's so rare I can talk to anyone about these items because people don't listen. I've always been accused of not listening. There's different ways of listening. You can listen to somebody's words, or you can listen to who they are, their actions, their their faces. If you listen to, take for gospel every word that someone tells you, you wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. I think you have to have a certain amount of non-listening to the words. And over the years, what are you doing that for? You can't do that. What are you wasting your time on that for? I've had them all. And if anyone says that to me, it's like, bye-bye. I'm not listening to you. So I won't listen if someone's negative, unless it's to do with safety. There may be something I've overlooked and I haven't thought of. And so it's like, oh yeah, I'm so pleased you told me that person could have. So that's important, that kind of listening. But there are too many naysayers out there. Did I get off the subject? Because this subject of listening is actually part of a module that I'm stuck on, that how to get people to listen, but not take it as gospel. It's not listening, it's communication. Listening is only part of that communication.
Mm-hmm. And I think that Scott's
I
point
agree.
is kind of like he was curious, like, and I mean, I do this work. I live and breathe this work, I should say. And so one of the things that I always say to partners is, yeah, like have an open, transparent conversation with your community member, with your whoever you're trying to engage in the activity. Because to your point, Pauline, I think you said it earlier, like they know best. They know what they need. So instead of trying to come up with all these solutions in this background with like just start the conversation, and probably within 5 minutes you'll have the individual or the community member say, this is what we need to be successful.
And at the same time, you will have, I mean, the range of the people who we're trying to get out on the water is as vast as human beings.
Mhm.
You will have somebody who'll go on, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I'm scared. I'm scared. Yeah, okay. I'm scared too. So, you work together. Or you could have someone, and it has happened, but, oh yeah, right there. And they're just like gung ho. They're getting the boat and take off. And even though I used to race, I can't keep up with them. So you've got that big range. And so that communication is really important, not just the listening, looking. I say 20 years ago, I say, look, listen, learn. And you may have grown up with that in your classroom.
Mhm.
And it's basically that. Look, listen, learn. Learn, listen, look. I don't care which order you want it in. It's all mixed together.
I love that. Look, listen, learn. I really like that.
It was a
Thanks.
poster when my children were little.
I'm gonna put it on t-shirts. Yeah, I think that's great.
There's a good idea. I'll get t-shirts with it on, because that's
Yeah.
basically what it is, communication. How many people do you know who are really good at communication? I don't think I'm on that list, because it's such a complicated subject.
I think someone who values communication will never think they're the best communicator, right? And I think that means that you're striving in that area probably more than you think. I think when people think that they're doing it all right, they're not checking all the boxes.
We all have challenges, and I certainly know that one of my challenges is I've got it in my head. I've got to get it out. And we use words. Well, it's not easy for everyone to use words. I may use action, but other people presume that you're going to use words. You see how that communication, that eye to eye, that listening, and just being with that person. If you can just be with them, then you can connect, and you can't connect with everybody. Some days you're like, okay, I'm going down that road and you're going that road, because that's not going to communicate.
So building into some of these discussions on our challenges and successes that I think you've spoke a lot of throughout this. And I apologize, focusing on the communicate, it just came up and I had to dive into that. So thank you so much for answering that. So I'm just going to ask, what are some of the challenges or successes that you want to speak of related to incorporating adapted equipment pieces into programming?
I think number one, money. We're in a commercial world. 20 years ago, nobody. And then I met somebody in Minnesota he gave up everything to create adaptive paddling gear. Also, there's people along the way who have made some really good equipment, but commercially they haven't been able to manufacture it. And that started with the very first outriggers that I was actually given. I still trying to get them made in Canada. I have use of the mold. There's another challenge. Money, it's back to money again. They would make them. If they knew that they were going to make 200% profit, they'd make them in a jiffy. Money, money, money. It goes back to that. And people use that as a barrier. Well, guess what? If you just get out there and do it and communicate and use bits and pieces that work, you can do it without money. And then the money will come. It's round the other way. Everyone's waiting for, well, I'm going to get this grant, that grant, and it doesn't happen. How about turning it around? So let me give you a story on this one. PFDs are a problem. Many people that we've worked with they're pear-shaped. Yeah, I think I'm getting pear-shaped too, but they're very pear-shaped. Now you got a PFD, and it needs to go in at the bottom in order to stop rising up if they're in the water. How do you stop that? Well, there's certain PFDs that actually, PFDs for fishermen. I'm not saying that fishermen are bigger people, but their PFDs will fit a person who is pear-shaped or larger better than the others. Right now, we have Salis Marine has, with negotiation, they are actually manufacturing an adaptive PFD. And it has a collar, it's a bright yellow. It has a collar which will not totally turn a person over, but will keep their head up. And they did initially attach a crotch strap. And as soon as I heard that, you know, my hair standing on end, and I'm going, could we talk about this? And right now I've suggested like a climbing harness around the legs. So if you have anyone, even a piece of string works, right? And the PFD goes up, put just Velcro around their legs and thread it through the side of the PFD. Do never attach anything to a PFD. And that will hold it up. Anyway, the first ones coming off the press, we have them. We've paid, well, not we now, because I'm not ED of AIM anymore, but they're paid for and they'll be delivered at the beginning of May. Brand new product. 20 years ago, that never would have happened. So attitudes have changed a great deal. I'm happy to talk about equipment if you like, because there's some really good people out there manufacturing it.
Yeah, I think like getting a list of
not in Canada yet. Sorry.
I was just gonna say getting a list of like, I know that like from like a programmer standpoint, from our audience's standpoint, like that's something where they just don't know where to go or where to look.
I do.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm just writing a training program for Abilities in Motion, and it will have all the resources in it.
Well, then that's a good tidbit just to put on here for people.
And it will be on their website, and you'll be able to click on it, take the training, find all the resources. But I think they're going to charge for the training something like $10. It's a huge amount of work. It's about a third done. All the videos are done, which was the hardest part actually, because of COVID.
Yeah.
But they're all done. Yeah, it's like, this is what you can do if you can't afford. So for example, the one thing that we have not been able to solve is an adaptive seat. There are some people with spinal injuries, and yes, we can talk about the T's and everything. Basically, what can you do? I don't need to know what T really. You talk to me. I'll listen. I'll make a note. So if you've got someone, you sit them in the kayak and they go plonk, right? You got a problem. You need a special seat and you need outriggers. Well, if you don't have outriggers, you can use the fenders. Nothing is 100%. So I must state that. Even outriggers, not 100%. There are Canadian ones. And I've had people adapt them. They're for a canoe. I've had them adapt them for a kayak, but you've got to be really careful, they will come off. So, you know, you every time it's like a Mr. Bean, isn't it? You solve one thing and something else created.
It's kind of true though. And like, I think before I ask my last question, like I kind of want to go back to that for a second too, because you know, I notice this a lot of the time, like right now, a lot of organizations are purchasing things like hippocamps, sport wheelchairs, sledges, and they're very, in some ways, generic pieces of adapted equipment. But I think you hit on something important that, you know, there's still specific needs within each individual's disability or barrier.
Yes.
Like, you know, there's still adaptations that are needed just outside of that piece of equipment, whether it is a modification in the seat. And like I have seen in the past, you know, some makeshift adaptations to make it comfortable for the person who has like, you know, limited core strength, for example, on a sledge. And you know, usually there's someone around that, either if it's a parent or a parasport coach, that feels confident to know how to address that. But where a lot of these programmers are not necessarily as comfortable or confident or competent with disability and adapted equipment, you know, how like what was your experience, or have you seen that where, you know, there are individuals where it's like, okay, I know there's a way to get this person. And I think you kind of gave some examples of that, where it's like, I think I know how to get the person in here, but like it's going to be some trial and error, you know, or how do we, I guess, like, yeah, I'm just so curious. Like, clearly persons with disability are used to not of having every need met for the activity, which is unfortunate, like in one way, you know, in terms of like, oh, like I'll make do, or, you know, and I've heard this too, where they're like, yeah, I got an adaptive piece of equipment. It didn't necessarily fit me the best, but I did it. But then I ended up actually getting an injury because it wasn't the perfect piece of adaptive equipment for me.
Yes.
So, you know, it's just this like weird, like, I think there needs to be maybe some acceptance around, like, even if you do provide an adaptive equipment piece or adaptive programming, however you want to word it, like, it's not going to meet everyone's need. And maybe we just need to be okay with that.
Correct. It's not. And you're never going to cater to every need. I think for like municipalities, you would have to go to the big manufacturers and just buy the stuff that they have built. Plus, you've got the liability issue. So if you're buying, say, from Creating Ability in Minnesota, he is Kevin. I've known him since he started, when he just went into the poorhouse, and he is amazing. And his adaptive seat, though, is $1,000.
Wow.
So if you are a municipality, you're going to buy that seat. You are not going to jiggle around, you know, with a like a kids toboggan seat for support them, or a go-kart seat. You're not going to do that. You're going to go straight to the manufacturer. I think a good case is also the MobiMat. There are other things you can use. Abilities in I can't get used to not being ED. Abilities in Motion has 2 MobiMats, because that was from the Enabling Accessibility Grant. They are amazing. Roll them up. You don't have these pieces of wood. Keep taking the back, put to the front. But, you know, it's the same concept of the MobiMat.
Yeah.
The transfer, we have to talk about the transfer, okay? The seats are one thing. The transfers, okay, this is a huge subject. Many municipalities are putting in these easy docks, and there's quite a few different designs. They are amazing because people in general are getting a little larger and less active. And they all have bought kayaks, right? And they can't get in and out them very well. As an instructor, I always spend time, how to get in, how to get out, in and out, floating log, slippery rock. You need to know how to get in and out, especially if you need to go to the bathroom. So that's really important. So a lot of the easy docks, they help you to get in, but they won't help you to get out. Now, there's some people use wheelchairs, really strong upper body strength. There's an awful lot of people who don't have that. So here they are sitting in their lovely little easy dock, and they're going, okay, so I've got to get up and out of the seat. There will be videos in the training, the online training, which show you how that can be done. You could use, Creating Abilities method. So you're talking another $1,000, really good. We couldn't afford that. So I created a system going to Home Depot, Dollar Store, Rona, and found all the bits and pieces, put it together. Holy smoked, it worked. There's risk with everything you use. There's risk. You've got to know how to use it, have enough people to use it. Now, the other thing we use is portable Hoyer lifts. Well, I started these, I think in Alliston, Ontario, they still have my original one that I paid $175 for. It was used. We had a couple of dock lifts, but they had to go. They're now got 2 battery operated ones. And as long as you've got the minimum of 3 people, minimum, plus someone, to help guide into the boat, and remember the legs. And then, of course, if they're using a wheelchair, you've got to remember they need a cushion. You could go and buy, what was this called? Sweet Cheeks from, just remember who it's come from. Anyway, it's called Sweet Cheeks. Or you can go to Rona or Canadian Tire and get that 2-inch foam. Either way, their skin has to be protected. So some of them, I worked with Tetra in 2019, and with Tetra, one of the engineers created a wood frame and then thought, it still doesn't work. So I created a little sling, rectangular piece. In fact, I've got to make another one. I've made so many, give them away now. And Salus are actually going to make that. Salus Marine are going to make it. So I need to get onto that, don't I? I've got the pieces over here and I've got to sew it up. So basically it helps them to slide along and it goes under them. There's nothing attached. You don't want anything that's going to get entangled. But to come out, they can just put a pole through here, pole through there, and just assist them and lift them up and onto the back of the bench. So it's all those little things. I'm lucky that I've always been, I can sew. I don't even now have an industrial machine, which is why it's got to go to Salus Marine, where they use all the proper threads. So if you're going to use a thread, if you're going to make one, make sure it's an outdoor thread.
Right.
Otherwise, after the first season, it'll disintegrate. I think, yeah, safety. That's it. I made a little note here, and I think, yeah, the seat is a big one. And I have known people in Europe, they actually would strap them in, but there are ways that you could hold them into the seat, but it's actually not fixed to the seat. They must never have a person strapped into a boat.
And honestly,
I go on a bit too much about this because
Great.
it's because you're passionate and there's nothing wrong with that. I am going to ask you the last question, but I think you made me think, like, you know, as much as this is for outdoor water equipment, like it does make me think about the same kind of momentum needed for when you're getting out of a sludge, like you're, you know, because it's trying to get out. And I've seen it at the Oval, actually, where they have a handlebar that you can grab onto and it kind of helps you lift and transfer. So almost like, you know, there are these different unique pieces out there that maybe isn't the adapted equipment in terms of, you know, the wheelchair, but also just helping you mobilize between pieces of equipment.
it's moving. There's something also called the emergency sling. And it's really expensive, but you can go on to Amazon and it's dirt cheap and it's for emergency.
Okay.
You've got to get that person who's using a wheelchair out right now. There's a fire.
Right.
And the elevator's not working. So there's all kinds of things. Slide it under, lift them up. Not everybody has that tough upper body strength. I think it's wonderful that you're starting to think.
Exactly.
That's the hardest thing to do, is to get this person to be resourceful.
Yes.
Thank you.
So
That's
our last
great.
question for you today, and I think this is just an opportunity for you to preach to our audience a bit. In terms of what advice would you give to a sport or recreation organization that is considering the purchase and application of adapted equipment pieces in their mainstream kind of programming? Yeah, and so kind of maybe just speaking to, what advice you would give to a sport organization that's considering adapted equipment or
First thing
adapted
comes to
programming.
mind. First thing comes to mind is a liability risk analysis. If you've got, you know, Uncle Fred who wants to go kayaking and he's in your lake, you can jiggle around. He's your relative. If you're in a business, it's a different ball game. They will hold you liable if that sling breaks. So if you buy commercial equipment, you've got your own insurance. You sure have your own risk management plan of how this is done, which is something else I'm working on. And also, if you buy from a company that has all the right threads, the right fabrics, etc., you're reducing your liability and you're increasing safety. So you've got two levels. You've got your people, municipalities that have got money, who can just go and buy this equipment, and I can tell you where to get it from. I have, actually not me, Abilities in Motion has a deal with Angle Oar. She makes paddles so you can paddle with one hand. Oh, I need one of those right now. So there's a lot of contacts out there. People have actually put in a lot of time and money into this. There's also a lot of people, and I've just heard of one because one of my people I know, they're just being designed and are waiting to get the price, is an adaptive PFD for someone who cannot see or hear. It's ingenious.
Wow.
And it's done on vibrations on their PFD.
Wow.
And I'm just getting the price on that and putting that together. How many he can manufacture, I don't know. It's in use in many of the states. So there's an awful lot out there now, but there's a lot of little people who cannot make their dream come true. Like one-arm paddler for canoeing with strapping, a special, she couldn't make it happen. So you go to the big guys, which is why I went to Salis Marine. Now, I know Creating Ability are now using 3D printers, and this is going to change, it's going to change the face of adaptive sports, not just kayaking, canoeing.
Mhm.
It sounds like part of it is, even though, like, Pauline, you keep referring to other organizations that are doing such amazing stuff. Like, I don't think that, I mean, I don't know about you, Scott, but for myself, like, I mean, other than Abilities in Motion, I haven't really heard of any of the other organizations you're even speaking of. And so I think that's almost another, not problem, but just like barrier for these organizations that maybe, like you say, like want to or need or want to buy these more manufactured high-end pieces of equipment. It's like they don't even know necessarily where to go or what exists out there. And so that education piece around even just look what's out here, and look what's available. I think we underestimate how valuable that is to our recreation and sport community.
You're absolutely right. And you've got my mind going again. I'm just a curious person. And there's a lot of curious people out there, and there's a lot of good stuff being made, and it is transferable to different sports. Like one person on my committee actually does adaptive stand-up paddle boards.
Cool.
And there's a couple of people, one company, the On It board actually went belly up, but there's somebody else doing it. But you can also do it yourself, but they are, again, really expensive.
Mhm.
So that's really for balance. Oh gosh, I mean, Nick, you could talk for days on this. I'm still limited on what I know. And I'm finding stuff weekly, like, wow, they're making that and that's used for that. It's unlimited.
Yeah. Is there ever, like, I'm just curious, like, just being mindful of your time, but like, I guess one last question I have anyways is, you know, it seems like you support varying individuals in this sport specifically. How do you, is it just a case by case scenario that makes you invest or look into a certain equipment piece, or do you try to be proactive with that and always look for the next equipment piece that you might want to integrate into the
Well,
program?
you
Or is
really
it...
ask good questions. I guess if the analogy would be, if you were into fashion, you'd always be chasing up the latest fashions. And again, with cars, motorcycles, horses, anything. But if this is your interest, your ears are always open, and you're communicating with this group of people like-minded. Like, yes, I can't focus on sled hockey, I can't, and pickleball, I can't focus on all those because it's too big a subject. I can only focus on kayak canoe and stand-up paddleboard. That's enough. That's enough for two of my lifetimes. So I've got to stick around for a little bit longer. And it's also an energy thing. But if you're looking at it from a personal point of view for getting Uncle Fred on the water, or you're looking at, running the adaptive programs for a municipality, those are two different needs. So if, do some homework, because, the easy dock, there's different ones. If you get one with a bar, now you just think how you can do that, how you can just lift them up using the bar. They only need a little bit of help to get up and on that seat to slide over. So instead of just buying this dock, know what questions to ask.
Mhm.
But again, it's like, listen to your clients. It goes back to that. What do I need?
Yeah.
In order to, so you make that list. And it's like, you don't know what you don't know, right? I still have a lot of things I don't know.
Exactly, though. And that's one thing that I find, like, as an inclusion consultant, you know, for these organizations. I find the biggest question I get sometimes is where do I go for this? Where do I go for this? And even I've tried to attempt a vendor list going, there's just too many options. Like I'm like,
you're right. And you've got to narrow it down, or it's like you end up going and not knowing where to start. I mean, I did a podcast 2 weeks ago for a canoe club in Ottawa. And instead of doing it like this is how it is, kind of webinar on a PowerPoint, it was more discussion. And I found amazing stuff out. I learned amazing stuff just by having it, instead of doing, this is what I'm going to teach you, to what can we work together? And I learned more because there's all kinds of pockets of people everywhere doing this. We've got to try and pull them together. And that's my next task. I'm just incorporating a new society, and that's going to be a goal, to try and bring everyone together. And that's the hardest thing to do. It's a challenge. Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, networking is definitely identified as like the biggest help, I think, when it's coming to these type of
We have social media now. Yeah, huge. And it's who you know.
Yeah.
I think individually, you know, if you try to do all these efforts alone, you just won't be as successful as, again, listening and using others who are really after the same thing, whether it's different sports or the same sport or different areas in general. There's so much similarities and overlaps that you can utilize.
There are, and it's about listening too, isn't it? Coming back to communication.
Yeah, it's the theme of the day, isn't it, Pauline?
It's the theme of the day. Is, you know, resourcefulness, communication, and how to go for a walk without falling down and re-breaking your wrist. And
so I don't think you didn't show up your wrist.
We need the audience needs to.
That's my logo. Where is it? My logo.
Oh, there you go.
That's my nickname, and it's got "You are my sunshine."
Aww,
and I'm an egg. You see, I'm an egg. I'm a broken egg. So humor is also very important. Don't take this too seriously.
Yeah.
It's all about having fun. It's all about getting everybody go and have fun. Now, we're not going to talk about behavior and how to deal with that right now, because that's a whole different ball game. We're only going to keep it to this, because that's how the caregivers and the people, you know, offering the programs, that's their ballpark. I'm not even going to this one.
That's why we'll just leave the carrot there, and we'll say, you know, look out for the training.
And this could be a new topic for you, is, you know, how to manage these sessions.
Yeah.
And I've done this for many years, and there have actually been a few sessions. It's like, oh, how did we survive that? It's like, and it's usually over reactions and behavior and reactions.
Yeah.
You've got to keep it calm. You've got to keep it fun, and you're going to have fewer problems.
Agreed.
But yeah, I learned a lot the hard way. If you haven't got a Moby mat, you know, you go to the store and get some of that outdoor carpet. That works.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think you've left a lot of tidbits in throughout this conversation today for our audience. I'm excited to see how they use it. And I'm excited to hear, you know, more about this training as it comes out. And perhaps maybe we'll reach out to you and see if we can, you know, pick your brain a bit more just about timing for that. So we can maybe leave it in the YouTube so people can know where to go for it. But in terms of today's conversation, I think this has been great. I think we've definitely, you know, gotten a wealthy amount of information from you and knowledge. And I think you have a lot more to share, Pauline. So perhaps we'll have to have you back sometime.
There's a lot of people that need to share to me, because there's a lot I don't know. And as I said, I don't know what I don't know. I also know that the older I get, the less I know.
And I think that's a theme through all the conversations we've had so far for this conference has been, or speaker series has just been about, like, yeah, you don't know what you don't know, but also like, this is just a field where all, like, a topic that we're all still learning about. And I think that, like, bringing down that intimidation for, you know, people who may feel like, oh, like, I'm not the expert. It's like, we're all, you know, learning, and we're all going to continue to be learning, because this is a new, you know, subject and a new, like, as we mentioned in the beginning of this talk today, like, it's only been so much change in the last 50 years. So, there's still a lot further to go. But I think if we're all learning in it together and we're all committing to it being a priority, then there's only more great change to come. So,
And it's about sharing.
exactly. Yeah.
And not everybody likes to share. Or have a good time. As you know what, I miss. You have such a good time on the water. I would say the best times for being with people from community living associations. These people, there's no hang-ups about them. There's no nothing. They're just so clear, and you can just have a good time.
Yeah.
And it's what it's all about, because sometimes they just maybe want to just sit on the water on their own.
Yeah.
All day long, they're chased along. Do this, do that. Don't do this, don't do that. They just want to sit in the boat and float. In fact, I like doing that sometimes too.
I do it when my arms get tired.
You're a kayaker? Yes. We're going paddling, okay?
All right. I'll hold you to that. That's definitely something I'll be up for. No.
So my goal right now is to get clubs, businesses inclusive.
Yeah.
Is that a challenge? Oh, yes. What's the number one challenge? Probably money. Energy, money comes back to that.
Well, definitely stay connected with us, because I definitely think that you're trying to do something great. And I think that in itself will get you the recognition. And I'm sure lots of people will be, if we left your phone number in this YouTube video, you'd be getting lots of phone calls. So
I'm not ready for that. I'll pass it on. I'm actually going to get, this is still a Toronto number, and I'm actually going to get a local number, but one thing at a time.
Okay.
One thing at a time. It's called money, I've got to have the money to get the other phone line, and so it goes on.
Love it.
And it's okay. The main thing is you're doing something.
Exactly.
And we all work together to make that change happen. It's not one person.
I think we should leave it there. That's a good leaving note to just leave it on.
Mic drop.
Yeah, mic drop.
And you can cut out the piece about the egg on the cast, okay?
Yeah. Thanks so much, Pauline. Thanks for tuning in to today's conversation on Influencing the Shift 3.0. Influencing the Shift would not be possible without the Northern Inclusion Access Committee. Its representatives are made up from varying organizations within the northern region of Nova Scotia, including partners from East Hants, Colchester, Pictou, and Cumberland counties. These partners identified a gap in service delivery within the sport and recreation sector when providing opportunities for persons living with disability. We all play an important role in shifting towards a more inclusive sport and recreation sector for individuals with varying abilities. Let's start by influencing the shift.